Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Federal officials are standing firm on their account of the Minneapolis shooting as video evidence appears to contradict key elements of their narrative. The case has intensified political scrutiny, public anger, and renewed debate over federal law enforcement accountability in the U.S. Protesters gather in Minneapolis to demand federal immigration agents leave after a 37-year-old man is fatally shot by Border Patrol, intensifying local outrage. Governor Tim Walz calls on President Trump to withdraw the agents as demonstrations and political tension grow over the incident. China said on Monday that a preliminary deal of trade with Canada does not target any third parties after the US threatened to impose 100% tariffs on Canadian products if the agreement were finalized. The Kremlin on Monday said the US trilateral talks in the UAE between Russia and Ukrainian negotiators had been held in a constructive spirit, but that there was still significant work ahead. Meanwhile, over 1,300 apartment buildings in Kyiv remain without heating after Russian missile and drone attacks. Ukraine says a wave of strikes hits the energy grid, cutting power to 1.2 million properties nationwide. Netanyahu's office says the Gaza-Egypt crossing will reopen in a limited manner once the search for the last remaining Israeli captive's body is completed, as authorities face growing pressure to allow humanitarian aid into the enclave. Philippine authorities are searching for survivors after a passenger ferry sinks in southern waters, leaving at least 18 dead and many still missing. A massive storm leaves over 1 million households without power and forces more than 10,000 flight cancellations across the U.S. Officials warn of life-threatening conditions from Texas to New England as at least 3 storm-related deaths are reported. And on to the top focus stories now, viewers. Russia's presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said that the friendly atmosphere is unlikely at the ongoing trilateral talks on the Ukrainian conflict. He stressed that while the meetings in Abu Dhabi are not warm, participants must communicate constructively to achieve results. The first 2 sessions were held on January 23 and 24, with Russia represented by Igor Kostyukov, Ukraine by Rustem Umerov, and the US by Steve Witkoff. Peskov confirmed that a new round of talks is scheduled for next week. Officials continue working to find a path toward conflict resolution. Professor Georgy Toloraya from the Russia Academy of Science joins me in this discussion. Professor, thanks very much for joining us. Firstly, peace talks are being held as is being reported in a constructive manner, but no real outcome has emerged as of now. Do you think the sticking point around Donbass and the security guarantees and then the elections that are to take place in Ukraine, if conditions allow, can be resolved in these talks?
I haven't yet seen some radical change in Ukrainian positions. They're sticking to some points which are obviously not acceptable, and well, the territorial issue Donbass is just one of them. I don't see any breakthrough or radical point. However, it's a good sign that the talks are held in a constructive manner, what was told by our spokesman, and that they are continued. That's a good sign. At least they're not broken. So we shall see what will be going on. But I won't be too optimistic right now.
All right. What's your view of the guarantees that have now been assured from the U.S. to Ukraine?
Well, I don't know what Zelensky has in mind and what Trump has in mind, and how do their vision really correspond to each other. However, the important thing is that Zelensky would be satisfied, and if he is, then there's one less of point of contention for the negotiations. If Zelensky say that these guarantees are okay, then it's good. And at the moment, nobody really cares well, what will follow, how these guarantees will be implemented and when, and will there be any occasion for them to be implemented? That's too far off a prospect.
All right, Professor, where do you think Russia stands amidst this? The Russian envoy has clearly said that the atmosphere of the talks is not warm. It's, of course, the first time that Russia and Ukraine are sitting together for a peace dialogue. What really do you think is Russia's contentions that still remain, and if a conclusion or a solution to them could be arrived upon in these talks?
Well, to tell you frankly, the goals of the special military operation are not yet reached. And I don't know how President Putin is going to sell to the public anything short of a victory. And there's no sign of a solution that can be presented as the reaching of all the points of all the aims of the special military operation. So we have to wait and see how the negotiation will continue.
All right, Professor, thank you for your comments. Then I request you to stay on. Moving ahead now, viewers, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has also said that Moscow continues regular diplomatic contact with Venezuela, and maintaining ties with President Delcy Rodriguez is a priority for Caracas. Peskov told reporters that Russia and Venezuela communicate daily through diplomatic channels, and that both sides have ongoing bilateral projects and mutual investments that are interested in continuing. He stressed that relations with Venezuela remain important to Russia and noted that Rodriguez is known personally to Russian officials. Rodriguez became the acting president of Venezuela in early January after a U.S. military operation there in Caracas resulted in the capture of former President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores, who were taken into U.S. custody and now face criminal charges in New York. Professor Tolurai, I request you to join me back in the discussion with your first comments. How do you view the fact that Russia, contrary to Trump's position on Ukraine, is maintaining close ties and dialogue with Rodriguez?
Venezuela, not only with Maduro personally, but with all the others. I think that was noted in other comments by our ambassador, Melik Bagdasarov, who said that the betrayal of the military was the cause for Maduro's capture. So that means we've got quite a lot of insight into what's going on in Venezuela. And of course, Russia is going to use it to its advantage. We're not going to contradict Trump on that, but maintaining the relations and maintaining the contacts, not necessarily on anti-American basis, I think it's essential.
All right. Do you think Trump will really be happy with this dialogue between Rodriguez and Putin?
Well, we are not discussing something that may be against Trump, and we are not challenging what he's doing. Putin is very cautious about that, and there's no direct high-level criticism or very acute criticism. So I think that this is quite a subtle maneuver around this situation.
All right, sure. How do you view China's position at this point in time with Venezuela?
Well, I cannot say much about China, but I think that China has much more to lose, and China is also very cautious so far.
All right, Professor Tolurai, thanks then very much for joining me in this discussion with your comments. Now moving ahead, viewers. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has called on the US President to apologize for comments about NATO allies in Afghanistan. This comes as Trump earlier claimed that America's allies avoided frontline duty, which sparked outrage among European politicians and veterans. Pistorius said Trump's remarks were disrespectful to the fallen, stating they stood side by side with the US in Afghanistan, with 59 German troops losing their lives. He urged Trump to apologize, calling it a sign of respect and decency. Pistorius also stressed Europe must rebuild its military capabilities and not rely solely on the US for defense. The comments also prompted reactions from British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who deemed Trump's remarks appalling. Trump has not yet issued an apology. And all right, viewers, let's give you some more context on the latest details now coming in as far as Trump's remarks on NATO troops in Afghanistan is concerned. Let's remind you, Trump had said that troops from countries members of the NATO defended or they deterred frontline duty, a remark that has been met with sharp criticism not just from Germany now, but also from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer earlier. And in the latest, of course, the German Defense Minister has also asked Trump to apologize for his remarks. This is, of course, another instance of growing rift between the US and Europe, with the German Defense Minister now towing the line of UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer as far as Trump's remarks on NATO troops deployment in Afghanistan before Taliban is concerned. In fact, let's give you some more details of remarks that are coming in from Germany. Pistorius, the German defense minister, has said that Trump's remarks were disrespectful to the fallen, stating that they stood side by side with the US in Afghanistan, with 59 German troops losing their lives. Remember, viewers, even British troops had died in conflict. As many as 150,000 British soldiers were deployed in Afghanistan, and 457 British soldiers had also died there. In remarks that even Prince Harry said were disrespectful to the troops. He himself was deployed twice to Afghanistan. Now, another criticism, of course, coming in from Germany, whose defense minister has sought Trump's apology. He urged Trump to apologize, calling his remarks a sign of disrespect, and said that apologizing would be a sign of decency. He also stressed, in fact, that Europe must rebuild its military capabilities and not rely on the US for defense. And now joining me in this discussion is Ben Aris, former Moscow bureau chief at the Daily Telegraph. He joins us from Berlin. Ben, you're in Berlin, of course. Now, Germany is also speaking against Trump on his remarks on NATO troops allegedly avoiding frontline duty, NATO troops from Europe while in Afghanistan before Taliban. Of course, these remarks are going to draw criticism from all these countries who are sending their soldiers to fight wars in third countries. But would you say Trump is really going to reflect on his comments and apologize as he is being asked to?
I doubt he's going to apologize. Since he came in, and starting back with the Munich Security Conference last March, that the States has been extraordinarily critical of the EU, belittling them, running them down. And Trump has made it perfectly clear that he has very little regard for the EU. And like I say, pre-Trump, the special relationship between Europe and the States has been in the bedrock of the Western unity. But since Trump has come in, and particularly with the new security strategy that he released, he's downgraded the relationship between the US and Europe to one of master and servant. And he sees Europe little more than a market. And indeed, his most virulent criticism in that strategy was not for rivals like branding policy to interfere with domestic politics in Europe, which is unconscionable, in order to push pro-MAGA, pro-far-right parties in Europe that better align with his vision of how politics should be. So this latest row is just running down Europe again. He's saying they're weak. Now he's calling them cowards. And he's been called upon, you don't treat your partners, your friends like that. But the point here is that Trump doesn't see Europe as a friend or a partner. He sees it as like schoolboys who he can push around.
Yeah. But this is, of course, his remarks on NATO, of course, coming after his acquisition bid for Greenland. But Trump is really not stopping short of alienating his allies, traditional allies in Europe. Where do you see this transatlantic alliance going on?
Well, it's collapsing, or perhaps we can already say it's collapsed. The transatlantic alliance counts for very little. I mean, the remarks about the NATO soldiers as a belittling of, you know, the troops that were sent into the front line in Afghanistan, a very difficult war. And Americans needed help from their allies. But Greenland is the same thing. Greenland is a member of the EU. And Trump has suggested that he will militarily annex an EU member state because he wants it for strategic purposes. You can't do that. So what's left? I think the question we should be asking is what's left of the transatlantic alliance? Yeah. And it seems very little. I mean, it's trade now. There's trade between the two sides, and that's about it. Politically, geopolitically, there seems to be.
Europe now put a freeze on that trade as well with the US.
Well, there's free trade, and it's the biggest trade pair in the world, some $4.5 trillion of turnover every year. So it's an important market, and one that Trump cannot afford to ignore. But then the trade deal he did with von der Leyen last year, the US is now charging the EU 15% tariffs on imports to the States, and has engineered at the same time no tariffs for American exports to Europe. So it's a very one-sided deal. And in reaction, we've seen suddenly the EU is now trying to diversify. So at the moment, they're in the middle of doing a huge trade deal with India. And at the same time, there's a huge trail with Mercosur, Latin America. And so Europe is scrambling to diversify away from America because it can no longer be trusted.
How do you see China benefiting from this rift between the US and Europe?
Well, anything. I mean, the China and Russia, they're battling with the West because they have this multipolar view of the world, and they've been complaining for the longest time that the US dominates. And so the divisions within the Western allies, now they're like chasm. It's a chasm. It's very deep. Is only good for China and Russia because it gives them more freedom. I mean, the West is distracting itself. The EU is distracting itself with fights with the States when they should be cooperating and building, you know, a bigger, better, more competitive machine. And in the meantime, China and Russia are being left to their own devices. The whole Ukraine war issue is sort of fallen off the front page as a result of this.
All right, Ben, thanks then very much for joining me here.
Pleasure.
And now moving ahead, viewers, let's cover some news from Philippines, where former President Rodrigo Duterte will face a hearing at the International Criminal Court next month. Judges ruled Duterte is fit to participate, rejecting defense claims that he is medically unfit. The confirmation of charges, a hearing begins on February 23, where judges will decide if allegations can proceed to trial. Duterte faces 3 counts of crimes against humanity linked to at least 76 murders during his war on drugs from 2013 to 2018, including killings of high-profile targets and lower-level drug suspects. He has been held at the ICC detention unit in the Netherlands since his arrest in March. The court continues pre-trial proceedings despite leadership challenges, including the temporary absence of its chief prosecutor. And now let's cover some news from South Asia. A government-appointed panel in Bangladesh has raised concerns over an electricity import deal with India's Adani Power, saying the contract is overpriced and shows serious procedural lapses. According to the National Review Committee, power supplied from Adani's coal-fired Goda plant in Jharkhand is priced at nearly 40% higher than its closest private sector competitor. The panel said the project also showed the steepest cost escalation among Bangladesh's electricity import agreements with India. The report noted that Adani billed Indian corporate taxes to Bangladesh, a practice the committee said deviates from standard international norms, where power producers usually bear such taxes themselves. It also flagged the use of what it called excessively priced coal. The panel described the agreement as the most significant outlier in Bangladesh's cross-border power procurement and recommended a review of contracts to explore renegotiation of fiscally damaging clauses. Adani Power said it continues to supply electricity despite large unpaid dues and said it was not consulted during the review process. And I now invite Prashanta Kumar Shell, who is a political commentator from Dhaka, to join me in this discussion. Firstly, Prashanta, thanks very much for joining us. Do take us through the details of the contentions that are being raised in Bangladesh to start with.
Yes, it's a very crucial pick up the moment from bargaining issues from Adani's power plant versus to Bangladesh government, interim government. You know that in our national review committee have declared already that there's some actually the mechanism flaws from between the negotiation between Adani's power plant and Bangladesh. From there is some issues from that is there. And my observation actually, you know that there is some purchase agreement between two countries when you can just purchase anything between two parallel countries. So you have an agreement, international law, international regulation and everything. But unfortunately, you see that all are talking about the media. Why you cannot talk about in your internal discourse matter? So this is a very sticking matter. If you have an in bargaining, if you take that this year over prices, exaggerated prices, and everything's happening, so no problem. So you have to write these talks, but you have to your closed door matter. You can officially you can deal, but you can talk about the in open media. I don't know what is insight for that the two relation between that. You know that the Adani is already we have some due between the interim government from Adani's power plant, and this is very crucial. Actually, you know that the power plant is in Jharkhand. There is some maintenance cost from just in turnover from the electricity from in Bangladesh. So there is some happening, some procedure. The cost is actually is an overpricing, but you can talk about the in a parallel issue, in a diplomatic box, in a very sophisticated moment. But you can talk about that everything bargaining issues from the other hand to media and everything is not a very good sign for from your purchasing power. So I think it should be negotiable. It's a bargaining. But the present situation, you talk about the especially the India-Bangladesh relation. There is some unwanted situation is there. Some cricket issue, ICC issues is there. So there's a lots of issues in behind that. I think it's a very driving bounce for the people of Bangladesh, because you know that Adani we haven't just already already facilitated by Adani power plant, especially in our electricity. You can just our major part of the electricity is come from Adani's Goda span. So that this is a very crucial moment. So how we can deal with these Adanis and everything. So do you have a very mechanism plan? You have a mastering plan. How you can just contact from Adani and other groups, other persons, because you have to the internationally you can deal that is some
Prashant, I want to say if Bangladesh wants to continue doing business with India and place ports with India, it will also have to respect the Hindu minorities in Bangladesh and not go on with the rampant killings of the minorities there without really holding the perpetrators to account.
Yes, there's some issues is there, some political narrative issues here. There is some religious, ideological, especially the Hindu minorities. They are here from attacking from some several districts. So these are the issues, and you can then talk about the actually the government, the present government intention, what they have to intend to plan. They have to intend to plan to deal with the India, to deal with the Indian companies. So what is their plan? So if you think that your plan is right, there's no problem. We see that in the context of our cricket. So you know that Bangladesh is now in banned in the international cricket council from the T20 World Cup. So this is a very not good signal for you. If you have dealings with another country, if you have dealing in another company, you have a pre-plan. So if you have done a plan, if you have done on very sophisticated milestones, so you cannot doing very hospice issues. So you haven't. We know that there is some bilateral issues. Is there very politically two-sided? There is some provocation is there, but you have to calculate it. You can deal with this big thing. If you are dealing the two companies to something metaphor issues, so you have to deal in some the in the legacy issues. So, but we cannot see the interim government for this that kind of dealings because there is some actually my observation isn't from some not very good imposed intention. I think the whoever does come from the in front of our next elected government, I think the situation will be solved from within from the next elected government because they can know the pulse of the people. So this is my observation.
All right, Prashanta, thanks very much then for joining me and helping us with your opinion. And now moving ahead, viewers, let's bring you some news from technology. Now, the European Commission has opened an investigation into Elon Musk's AI chatbot Grok following concerns over explicit imagery being generated and shared on the platform. Regina Doherty, an Irish member of the European Parliament, has confirmed the investigation in a recent statement. The inquiry will focus on whether X complies with European Union digital regulations, including content governance, risk mitigation, and fundamental rights protection. A spokesperson from the Commission did not immediately respond to confirm details about the investigation. Doherty expressed concerns that this case highlights serious gaps in the regulation of AI technologies and platforms. She stressed that AI-generated images, including explicit content involving undressed women and children, are unlawful and unacceptable. Doherty emphasized the importance of enforcing European Union rules designed to protect individuals online, asserting that no company operating within the European Union is exempt from these laws. X has not responded to requests for comment on the investigation. And viewers, that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.